Hello and welcome to the Heatley Stand End podcast for the very first time. My name is Damian. Great to have your company wherever you're listening or watching us right around the country. This is going to be an exciting project, tracking the trials and tribulations of the Carlton Football Club throughout season 2026 and beyond. I've been a long-suffering Carlton supporter since 1995. The very first game I went to was the Queen's Birthday clash against Melbourne. We won that game that afternoon on our run towards the 16th premiership, which at that time was a VFL AFL record, which has also been matched by Essendon in 2000 and Collingwood in 2023. Whilst I was a bit too young to remember the hype around the flag and the celebrations, I started to fall in love with football towards the end of 1996 and 1997. The second game of football I ever attended was the round 21 Fitzroy-Richmond game at the MCG, which was Fitzroy's final game in Melbourne. They lost by 151 points. Come 1997, I really started to fall in love with the game and with Carlton. I went to round 8, 1997 against the Hawks at Optus Oval. The Legend Stand had just been completed. Jason Dunstall did his knee in the left forward pocket towards the Heatley Stand End. I also went to the round 22 game against Richmond. That was the same weekend that Princess Diana died in 1997. Carlton, along with Fremantle, Port Adelaide and Brisbane, were all vying for the 8th spot. Brisbane lost on the Friday night, which meant Carlton was next cab off the rank. If they were to beat Richmond, they would make the finals. Went there, so excited, sat in the Legend Stand once again. We kicked 7 goals in the first quarter to Richmond's 3. Cooter was on fire, leading goal kicker for that year. We went at half-time about 3.5 goals in front. Same thing at three-quarter time. And then in the final quarter, we just fell apart. I remember Kernahan went off, did his hamstring. That was to be his final game of his career. And Richmond really threw Matthew Rogers, Richo, even Ben Harrison kicked the winning goal. They just broke blue hearts that afternoon, winning by 2 points. That was a heartbreaking thing for an 8-year-old to have to endure. Come to 1998, by about round 9, David Parkin, his career was in jeopardy as Carlton coach. The president, John Elliott, put an ultimatum to him, and the Blues were able to reverse their form and actually finish off that season quite handsomely, and they once again finished in 11th spot. I've got strong memories of going to the MCG round 1, 1999, a night game against the Bombers, and seeing Matthew Lappin as a blue bagger take an absolute screamer in the forward pocket towards the punt road end. We lost that game. We also lost the subsequent game in round 16 against the Bombers by 76 points. And David Parkin post-game described Carlton as a B-grade side. Well, no one expected a B-grade side to actually run all the way to the preliminary final. We played Brisbane in week 1 of the finals, got done by 73 points. As luck would have it, we were able to play West Coast in an away game at the MCG. Adrian Hickmott kicked 3 goals. We beat the Eagles, and then we played the Bombers the week after. If you could recall, that was the 18th of September 1999. That was the same day as the state election. It was a red-hot favourite, Jeff Kennett, going up against Steve Bracks. Same thing in the football that afternoon. It was a red-hot favourite, Essendon, taking on Carlton. No one really gave the Blues a chance. I mean, we did have a really good nucleus of the 95 premiership heroes still in that side: Camporelli, Ratton, Bradley, Koutafidis, as well as a mixture of some of the young up-and-comers like Lance Whitnell, Matthew Allen. So we did have a nice blend of youth and experience, but we just hadn't been able to be consistent that season. And the Bombers, they were flying. You had Lloyd and Lucas up forward, Fletcher down back, Barnard, Solomon, Heffernan, Mercury. They had a real roll call of stars in that side, and they were just unstoppable. And they left a few flags on the table around that time, but come to the preliminary final, Glenn Mathis starts up forward, kicks one of the opening goals. The Blues get on a run, lead at half-time. That lead's cut back at three-quarter time. The Bombers look like they're going to run away with the game. They get up to a 16-point margin. Koutafidis, he's let loose in the midfield by Parkin. They just say, Cooter, follow the ball, go wherever it is. Cooter ends up kicking 2 monstrous goals to get us back in the game in the final term towards the city end of the ground. Goes to centre-half back, takes a couple of match-saving marks. And the rest is history. Carlton win in an epic, which is pretty much the high watermark of my Carlton supporting life, and beat the Bombers by 1 point. Almost as fun and joyful as winning a grand final, pretty much. The week after, we met North Melbourne, prime North, 1990s North, Wayne Carey, Stevens, Archer, the list goes on. That team was arguably probably the best team of that decade. They may win the last premiership that decade and beat us. So that was pretty much the high watermark. And then you got the salary cap troubles of '02 and '03. John Elliott leaves the club after he's been there for 2 decades and had a hand in 2 premierships, and really it's all downhill from there. That period in the early 2000s when we were done for rorting the salary cap, we lost early draft picks, which cost us Daniel Wells and Brendan Goddard. There was a little bit of a uptick in performance and, a position in the ladder in 2004 when Dennis Pagan was able to recycle players like Harford, Morrell, Barnaby French. So that was like a glimmer of hope around that period. And then I remember going to, back then it was Telstra Dome in '05, it was March of 2005. It was a hot night. We won the Wizard Cup in front of 43,000 fans. I remember Eddie Maguire in the Channel 9 telecast just going off his nut. Favola's kicked 7 goals. He just absolutely went crazy. And we won a premiership. Albeit it was pre-season premiership, but, for a lot of fans of my generation, that would be able to witness some silverware in a rather lean time. And we thought, okay, geez, like this is going to turn around pretty quickly. Alas, another Woodham was to come. So it's been a pretty rocky road being a Carlton supporter since 1995. You get to 2007. Once again, we're one of the struggling clubs in the competition. We get a string of first draft picks, Mark Murphy, Bryce Gibbs. Then we go to the Cruiser Cup against Melbourne in the last round of 2007, and we get Matthew Cruiser, who was a phenomenal junior ruckman for St. Mary's and the Northern Knights, and we bring him in. And obviously, probably one of the big movements of that early 2000 period in terms of player trades was Chris Judd coming from West Coast to Carlton. He'd been a star at West Coast, won a Brownlow medal in '04, captained the premiership in '06. And then at the end of '07, with West Coast premiership team sort of separating with Ben Cousins being suspended, Judd wanted to come back to Melbourne. And there were a couple of clubs after him. There was Collingwood, Melbourne were keen on him, but Greg Swan, who had just become the CEO of Carlton at that time, and Dick Pratt, who had taken over as president, they put a pretty lucrative offer towards Chris Judd, and the rest is history as Judd joined Carlton. Really gave a lot of supporters like myself some, hope and morale going into that 2008 season. It was a slow build. 2008, we finished 9th. We play Hawthorn in that final game of the season. It's that race to the century between Buddy Franklin and Brendan Favola. Favola finished on 99 goals. And then 2009, 2009, and now that 2009, 2010, 2011 period where we sort of started to become a consistent side. We won games that we were expected to win. We were very competitive around that period. Obviously, Judd, he was just phenomenal. And, it's a different Judd to what was at West Coast. The Judd at West Coast at that point in time was a speed machine, break out of the blocks, run the lines. The Judd that we saw at Carlton, very much a contested beast, winning contested football in and under the packs, just, extracting the ball and feeding it out to the likes of Murphy, Carato, Gibbs. And I think, looking back, that 2011 finals campaign, and just the way we matched up against teams, we beat Essendon in an elimination final by 11 goals. We go to West Coast the week after, got a few players out. We lose them by 3 points, and West Coast went on to play Geelong in the preliminary final. We matched up against Geelong so well during that time frame. I remember we beat them earlier in 2011 on the MCG. It would have been Easter Monday, and I would have backed us in again. I would have backed us in to really take it up from them on that preliminary final day and almost get over the line. Then you get to 2012, and unfortunately for Brett Ratten, that was the last season of his coaching career at the Blues. We underperformed, missed the finals. The club made a really tough choice, and probably in hindsight, a wrong choice by moving Ratten along because Malthouse was available, so Nick became coach. In 2013, look, a lot of people expected this team to be primed and ready to contend. And Mick probably thought he was coming to a side that was ready to contend as well. You had Judd, who was probably towards the end of his prime, Mark Murphy in his prime, Bryce Gibbs, Jared Waite, Carazzo, Henderson, just like real. The boys finished ninth and we never meant to make the finals, but the Bombers were obviously disqualified. The Bombers were disqualified due to the Asada drug scandal. Carlton finished ninth, but will then play in the first final against Richmond. I'm going to that game, 91,000 at the MCG on a Sunday afternoon, the elimination final, and we started like absolute crap. The Tigers were all over us in that first half. I had this sick feeling in my stomach. I thought, I should go home. I should go home. This is not going to end well for us. And at half time, we're down by 26 points. Cochin was running riot. So too was Dustin Martin. He kicked a great running goal towards the punt road end. And I thought, shit, you wait this long and you've got very limited finals experience. And I thought, shit, this is not going to be a great afternoon. And then, lo and behold, you come out in the second half, and Nick Dygan, who wasn't even meant to be playing in that game, he was a late inclusion, kicks 4 goals and sparks an unlikely comeback. Judd was huge. The three Migos, Yaron, Betts, Garlett, just running right on that forward line in that second half. The boys were able to conjure up a miracle win, and were able to get over the line against the Tigers, which, just a magical afternoon at the MCG. And that was a real point in a long-suffering Carlton supporter's life that really gave us something to look forward to around that era. But once again, it wasn't to be, because the next couple of years, they just turned to absolute crap again. Nick was gone by midway through 2014. Brennan Bolton came in, the green shoots. We had a great draft. We picked up Mackay, Wiedering, Curnow. Cripps came to the club as well. And just, 2015 through to 2020, just finishing bottom of the ladder and bottom 4 and not really having much success. It was eroding and just really debilitating for a Carlton supporter just to have to put yourself through that week in, week out. Then we come to the Michael Voss era, and really we started a rebuild a year after Brisbane did in 2016. We had all the heavy artillery. You had Coleman middle forwards, Curnow, Mackay. You had Cripps running amok in the midfield. You had Wiedering as the key defensive post down back. Then you bring Cherry into the side. Adam Sard comes into the side. And we started to sort of, really become, in the eyes of many, a contender. Voss's first season in charge of 2022, we're 9-3, playing Sydney at Marvel Stadium on a Friday night. The joint's absolutely rocking. And we win that game. And I thought, geez, we're actually going to do pretty well here. I think we might go deep into September. For some reason, the wheels fell off. Things found us out. They realised that we were probably one-trick pony at that point in time. We just couldn't sustain what we were doing that first half of the year. And it got to the penultimate game of the season. We needed to really just win one game. We played the D's at the MCG on the Saturday night. We had our chances to win that game, lost it through just poor time management, not able to ice the clock. Cozzy Pickett just snaps around the body over his head to the city end of the ground. The D's, they break our hearts. And, I remember that final sign of that game. The players were just forlorn, all on the ground, just absolutely out of it, just completely knackered. And I thought to myself, how are we going to get ourselves up for the week after when we play Collingwood? We need to play Collingwood on the Sunday to book a spot in September, a place we hadn't been to since 2013 before then. We get to the MCG that Sunday afternoon, overcast conditions. We start nervously, can't really catch a break, but then we get a bit of a kick on and we get out to a 5-goal lead against the Pies. And I thought, can we dare to dream yet? Can we start to look at booking tickets for a final at least? You start to get ahead of yourself a little bit. And I think we all did, including the players, because the players came out in the final quarter and just bit by bit, they just wound back the margin. Curnow had a chance to ice the game to the punt road end with about 11 or 12 minutes to go. He misses a shot. And then the dagger in the heart, as Gerard Whateley said in the AFL Nation call, he said Collingwood would come like the Grim Reaper, and they did as Jamie Elliott just drilled the winning goal. And I never felt so numb as I did at the football. I've never felt as numb as I did that afternoon at the football. It brought me back to that day as an 8-year-old at Optus Oil in round 22 of 1997. Similar sort of circumstance, but being a 33-year-old just sitting there in, disbelief of what I've just seen. And can it get any worse for a Carlton supporter? We've put up with so much for so long, and you just think we're just finding new ways to lose. And that was 2022. The year after, 2023, we thought, okay, we're going to build on the first year of Voss. We're going to be able to learn from our mistakes. We're going to be able to build and really work towards being a contender. And we started that season appallingly. I remember we were about 4-7 at the midway point, and I remember thinking, well, I've got to go to a mate's wedding in Italy in September. I think there'll be no issue booking a European holiday in September because we're not even going to get anywhere near it. So booked these flights for a September holiday, thinking, all right, I can just go, enjoy myself, not going to have to worry about anything. Went to London for work. We played the Gold Coast. We started a bit scratchy in the first quarter, but we kicked 10 goals in the second term and totally blitzed them. And from then on, we just got onto a bit of a run, and we started to build momentum, and we started to win 1 game, 2 games. They just got on a roll and ended up winning about 9 or 10 in a row. Unfortunately, I can't cancel his trip because put a lot of money into it. Mate's getting married too, so I can't miss the wedding. And then on the first final, I'm in a pub in Krakow, an Irish pub, and thinking to myself, what am I doing here? I should be at the game. We hold on. We beat Sydney. I'm in a pub with people who've got no idea about what Aussie rules are, but they're just encapsulated by what they've just seen, because they've seen, 36 men out on the field just going hammer and tong. The Blues end up winning. Adam Chera just announced himself on the final stage. Patrick Cripps was immense. TDK, probably, of his 100 games he played for Carlton, that was his best one. The week after, I'm in Taormina in Sicily, which is down south, and don't really have a TV to watch the game on, so I'm having to stream the Carlton-Melbourne final on my phone. I'm on a beach. Like, no one else in this place even knows what I'm watching. They couldn't care less, couldn't give an absolute rat's toss bag, to quote Malcolm Blight, about what I'm watching. And here I am just on a banana lounge, riding bumps and riding the nerves of this cutthroat semi-final. And I remember vividly thinking at halftime, the closer we're with these guys, the better it's going to be for us. Because if you recall, Brayshaw was knocked out the week before against Maynard. Melbourne probably under par in the second half of that season, just sort of limped over the line of the finals. And I just thought, if we can stick with them, we can overrun them. So we got to the last quarter, and the D's got on top. Like, they had so many chances. They should have won that game easily. Like, they hit the post a couple of times, some really, really errant misses, which were just, costly for the D's. And then I remember I couldn't watch it anymore. I'm like, we're 9 points down. This is absolutely going the way of a horror movie. So I stopped watching the feed. I just put the earphones in, channeled myself, and I was a young boy listening to the 99 preliminary final with Anthony Hudson, who was calling for 3AW back then. Hutto once again calling for AW this time round with Bruce Eva. Put my headphones in, and we get a goal, and it's about 6 minutes to go. We're 3 points down, and I thought, we're still not going to win this. And the time ticked away. We couldn't quite penetrate their defensive 50. And then in a whole moment of madness, Viney's kick smothered. Wiedering, he's got a tendency to sort of take the safe kick, but for the first time in his career, he just pulls the trigger, kicks it across the centre square, finds Ollie Hollands, plays on immediately, gets it to Doherty, who takes a great mark. Now, Doherty's got a decision to make. He's 65 metres out from goal. Does he keep running close enough to have a shot himself, or does he just bomb along? He bombed along. Akers takes the mark, kicks the goal. I'm listening on the radio. Bruce Eder is absolute they're going off his nut, pandemonium at the MCG. People think he's missed it, but he's kicked the goal. We win by 2 points, one of the greatest wins in my lifetime as a Carlton supporter, and I'm not there. Like, I'm going absolutely nuts on the beach in Taormina, Sicily. Everyone's thinking, what's this guy on? Like, he's got to settle down. So that's the roller coaster that I've been on over the last 31 years. Now, you look towards 2026, can we arrest that roller coaster and actually become a side that we can rely on? 3 years ago, you would have thought that by 2026 we'd be competing and challenging for a flag. Alas, it's not to be. We've cut deep over the last 2 years. We've had some high-profile players leave the club at the end of last season, Tom de Koning being the highest of those profile. Tom de Koning, Jack Silvani and Charlie Curnow leaving the club. As we approach 2026, the club won't say this publicly, but we're in a reset. And we're in a position where we're going backwards in order to hopefully go forwards in a year or two time to actually contend for the premiership and the elusive number 17. I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle this year. Having been training the last couple of weeks, we've got players who probably won't be able to sustain their abilities for an entire season. They'll get tired. They won't be able to they'll get tired. They won't be able to be. Having been a training the last 3 weeks, I get the sense that we're going to have some positives this year, but I don't think a lot of the positives are going to be in a team sense. We'll have a lot of individual we'll have a lot of individual positives, like Jagger Smith coming into the side will add a new dimension. Jack Ison looks terrific. I think Campbell Chester might play a few games. So we'll get a sense and a bit of a taste of, some of these younger players coming through. But from a team sense, I think we might struggle again this year. And that's not to be frowned upon, and it's not to be unexpected. I think Graham Wright and the board are going into this very much we're not setting Michael Voss up to fail, but he's not likely to succeed. So this is probably the time when you need to reset, because if you're going to reset when Tassie comes in, there'll be compromised drafts. Right now, Brisbane and Gold Coast, they're going to be like the two powerhouse teams in 2026. So this is going to be a good year to be able to reset. I'm not going to have high expectations. I want to see positives. I don't want to see the guys come out and just drop the bundle and the first sign of pressure. I want to see the guys compete. I want to see the guys show endeavour. I want to see improvement, and it don't have to be huge improvement. I just want to see incremental improvement throughout the year. And then we come to the end of the year, and if the board and Graham Wright decide to move on Michael Voss, which in my opinion, I think they will, well, then we'll cross that path when it needs to come. But I think 2026 opens up a world of possibilities for what this team can look like in the future. And I think if they can take this year as a experimental season and really blood young talent, blood players in positions that they might, if they can blood young talent and just give them a go, see if they've got what it takes to actually compete at AFL level, it'll hold us in great stead when we actually can start to draft in a bit more cream on top. We've got Cody Walker waiting in the ring, so we look like we'll be able to get him with enough points. In any case, I think 2026 is going to be an interesting and probably a year that's going to test a lot of Carlton supporters' patience. But I'm going to say, be patient. Don't lose it. Just understand and be realistic about where we are as a group, and understand that we can't just make huge gains over the course of a pre-season, and we have a changing complexion of our list. Well, there you have it. That's my story about how I became a Carlton supporter and my journey to 2026. Love to hear about yours. Leave them in the comments. How did you become a Carlton supporter? Your very first game you went to, who influenced you, and some of your favourite moments over the course of barracking for the Blue Baggers. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and on YouTube. Look out as we will release weekly episodes in the lead up to the home and away season. And throughout the home and away season, we'll be dissecting all the games, previewing matches on a weekly basis. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and go Baggers.